What if everything you believe about suffering is wrong? What if the worst moment of your life, the darkest night of your soul, the point where you want to give up entirely, is actually the doorway to discovering who you truly are? There was a man who lost everything: his wife, his parents, his brother, his pregnant sister, his home, his career, his freedom, his dignity. He was stripped naked, starved, beaten, and worked to the edge of death in one of the most horrific places in human history. And yet, from the ashes of that nightmare, he emerged with a message that has transformed millions of lives around the world. That man was Viktor Frankl. And today, we are going to explore his extraordinary insights together. This is not just a story about survival. This is a profound meditation on what it means to be human, on the power that lives inside you right now, waiting to be awakened. By the time you finish listening, you will understand something essential about yourself and about life itself. You will carry with you a truth that can never be taken away. So settle in, quiet your mind, and prepare yourself. What you are about to hear may change everything. Viktor Frankl was born in Vienna, Austria, in 1905. From a young age, he was fascinated by the human mind and the question of meaning. While still in high school, he began corresponding with Sigmund Freud himself. He went on to study medicine and specialized in neurology and psychiatry, developing his own therapeutic approach that focused on helping people find purpose in their lives. By his mid-30s, Frankl was a successful psychiatrist with a promising career. He had a loving family, a new wife named Tilly, and a manuscript he had been working on for years, containing the foundations of his life's work. Then, in 1942, the Nazis came for them. Frankl, along with his wife, his parents, and his brother, was deported to the concentration camps. Over the next 3 years, he would be moved from one camp to another, including the infamous Auschwitz and finally Dachau. During this time, he endured conditions that are almost impossible to comprehend. The prisoners were given barely enough food to survive. Many died of starvation. They were forced into brutal labor, often in freezing temperatures with inadequate clothing. They were beaten, humiliated, and treated as less than human. Disease spread rapidly. Death was everywhere, constant and random. Frankl watched as his mother was sent to the gas chambers. He learned that his father had starved to death. Later, he would discover that his young wife had also perished. His beloved manuscript, the work of years, was destroyed. And yet, in the midst of this unimaginable horror, something remarkable happened. Frankl began to observe himself and his fellow prisoners with the eye of a psychiatrist. He started to notice patterns. Some prisoners gave up and died quickly, while others, facing the same conditions, found ways to survive. What was the difference? The answer, Frankl realized, lay not in physical strength or youth or even luck. The difference was meaning. Those who had something to live for, some purpose that pulled them forward, some task yet to be completed, some person waiting for them. These prisoners had a far greater chance of surviving than those who had lost all sense of purpose. This observation became the foundation of everything Frankl would later teach, and it begins with a profound truth that you need to understand right now. You cannot always control what happens to you. You cannot control the circumstances of your life, the economy, the weather, other people's behavior, illness, loss, or 1,000 other things that may come your way. But there is one thing that can never be taken from you, one final freedom that remains yours no matter what. You can always choose your attitude. You can always choose how you respond. You can always decide what meaning you will make from your experiences. Frankl put it this way: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. Think about that for a moment. Between what happens to you and how you react, there is a space. Most people never notice this space. They react automatically, as if their circumstances directly control their emotions and behaviors. Something bad happens, and they feel bad. Someone insults them, and they feel angry. They lose their job, and they feel hopeless. But the truth is, there is always a gap, however small, between the event and your response. And in that gap lies everything. Your freedom, your power, your ability to choose who you will be. Frankl watched prisoners in the concentration camps demonstrate this truth in the most extreme conditions imaginable. He saw men who shared their last piece of bread with others. He saw prisoners who walked through the barracks, comforting those who were sick, offering words of kindness even when they themselves were starving. He saw human beings maintaining their dignity, their compassion, their inner light, even when everything external had been stripped away. These people proved something essential. They proved that the inner life, the spiritual life, cannot be destroyed by external circumstances. They proved that meaning and purpose and love are not dependent on comfort or success or even physical survival. And if they could find this freedom in a concentration camp, what does that say about your life? What does that say about the challenges you face, the difficulties that seem so overwhelming, the problems that keep you awake at night? You have this power too. Right now, it is your birthright as a human being. No one can take it from you unless you give it away. Now, let me tell you about a specific moment that illustrates this truth. Frankl describes the morning routines in the camp. The prisoners would be roused before dawn and marched out to work in the freezing darkness. The guards would shout and threaten. The weak would stumble and fall. It was a scene of utter misery. One morning, as Frankl stumbled along in the darkness, his feet torn and bleeding in his inadequate shoes, a fellow prisoner muttered a complaint about the terrible conditions, about their wives, about the hopelessness of their situation. At that moment, Frankl felt his mind transported. He suddenly imagined himself standing at a lectern in a warm, well-lit lecture hall. He was giving a talk about the psychology of concentration camps, discussing the very experiences he was now living through. In his imagination, he could see the audience, comfortable and attentive. He could feel the warmth of the room. This mental technique, this ability to step outside the immediate moment and see it from a different perspective, became one of Frankl's survival tools. By imagining himself in the future, describing these experiences to others, he gave his present suffering a purpose. His suffering was no longer meaningless torture. It became material for understanding, for teaching, for helping others. This is not wishful thinking or denial. Frankl was fully aware of the horror around him. But he found a way to extract meaning from it, to transform his suffering into something purposeful. And here is what this means for you. Whatever you are going through right now, whatever pain or difficulty or challenge you face, it does not have to be meaningless. You have the power to find purpose in it, to transform it into growth, wisdom, or service to others. Your struggles can become your greatest teachers if you choose to see them that way. Your wounds can become your wisdom. Your darkest hours can become the source of light for others. This does not mean you should seek out suffering or pretend that painful things are pleasant. Frankl never minimized the horror of what he experienced. But he discovered that when suffering is inevitable, when it cannot be avoided or escaped, we can still choose how we meet it. And that choice makes all the difference. Let us go deeper now into Frankl's understanding of meaning and purpose. Frankl identified three main pathways through which human beings can find meaning in their lives. Understanding these pathways can help you discover your own sources of purpose, regardless of your circumstances. The first pathway is through creation or work. We find meaning when we give something to the world, when we create something of value, when we accomplish tasks that matter. This might be through your career, through art, through building something, through solving problems, or through any activity where you bring something new and valuable into existence. Think about the moments in your life when you have felt most alive, most engaged, most fulfilled. Many of them probably involved creating something or contributing something through your work or efforts. When you are absorbed in meaningful work, time seems to flow differently. You forget yourself. You become part of something larger. Frankl himself found meaning through his work even in the camps. He secretly began reconstructing the manuscript that had been destroyed, scribbling notes on scraps of paper, determined to preserve his ideas. This work gave him a reason to survive, a task that was not yet complete. What work gives your life meaning? What would you create or contribute if fear and doubt did not hold you back? What task is waiting for you to complete it? The second pathway to meaning is through experience and encounter. We find meaning when we experience something profound, whether it is beauty, truth, love, or connection with another person. This includes the experience of nature, of art, of music, of learning, and most powerfully, of loving another human being. Frankl describes moments in the camps when prisoners would gather to watch the sunset through the barracks windows. Despite their exhaustion, despite their hunger, despite the brutality that surrounded them, they were moved by the beauty of the sky. In that moment, something in them was touched, something that transcended their circumstances. Even more powerful was the experience of love. Frankl writes about marching to work in the frozen darkness, thinking of his wife. He did not know if she was alive or dead. But in his mind, he held conversations with her. He felt her presence. He was filled with love. And in that moment, he understood something profound. He realized that love is the ultimate human experience, the highest goal to which a person can aspire. He understood that the salvation of humanity is through love and in love. A person who has nothing left in this world can still know bliss even, if only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of someone they love. This love was not dependent on physical presence or even on knowledge of whether the beloved was still alive. It was an inner experience, a connection that could not be broken by external circumstances. The guards could take everything else, but they could not take this. What experiences fill you with meaning and wonder? What beauty moves you? What truth inspires you? And most importantly, who do you love? Who would you think of in your darkest hour? That love is a treasure beyond price. Nurture it, express it, do not wait. The third pathway to meaning is through suffering itself. This is perhaps the most profound and difficult of Frankl's insights. When we cannot avoid suffering, when we are faced with a fate that cannot be changed, we can still find meaning in how we bear that suffering. We can transform tragedy into triumph, into growth, into a testament to human dignity. Frankl gives an example from his practice after the war. An elderly man came to see him, deeply depressed since the death of his wife 2 years earlier. He had loved her more than anything, and he could not escape his grief. Frankl asked him a simple question: what would have happened if you had died first and your wife had survived you? The man thought about this and replied that it would have been terrible for her. She would have suffered greatly. Frankl pointed out that by surviving, the man had spared his wife that suffering. His grief was the price he paid for this gift. Suddenly, the man saw his suffering in a new light. It was not meaningless torture. It was an act of love, a sacrifice that had purpose. The man's circumstances had not changed at all. His wife was still gone. His loss was still real. But his relationship to that suffering was transformed. He found meaning in it, and that meaning made it bearable. This does not mean that suffering is good or that we should seek it out. It means that when suffering is unavoidable, we have one final freedom. We can choose to meet it with dignity. We can choose to grow from it. We can choose to let it refine us rather than destroy us. What unavoidable sufferings have you faced? What meaning might you find in them? How might they be transformed from mere pain into something purposeful? Now let us turn to a critical insight that Frankl offers about human motivation and what truly drives us. In Frankl's time, the dominant theories of psychology focused on what might be called the pleasure principle. Human beings, it was thought, are primarily motivated by the desire to experience pleasure and avoid pain. We seek gratification, comfort, and happiness. Another influential theory emphasized the will to power. Human beings, according to this view, are primarily motivated by the desire for dominance, status, and control. Frankl did not deny that pleasure and power are motivating forces, but he argued that they are not the deepest motivation, not the fundamental drive of human existence. Instead, he proposed what he called the will to meaning. Human beings, at their core, are driven by the need to find significance, purpose, and meaning in their lives. This is not just a philosophical point. It has profound practical implications. Consider happiness. Everyone wants to be happy, but Frankl observed something counterintuitive. Happiness cannot be pursued directly. The more frantically you chase after happiness, the more it eludes you. Happiness is not something that can be grasped or possessed. Instead, happiness happens as a side effect. It comes naturally when you are engaged in meaningful work, when you are connected, in love, when you are living according to your values and purpose. Happiness is not a destination, but a byproduct of a meaningful life. This is why so many people today feel lost despite having comfort, entertainment, and opportunities that previous generations could not have imagined. Material abundance is not enough, success is not enough, even pleasure is not enough. Without meaning, something essential is missing. Frankl called this state the existential vacuum. It is the feeling of emptiness, boredom, and despair that comes from living without purpose, and he observed that this vacuum often leads to destructive behaviors. People try to fill the emptiness with addictions, with mindless consumption, with the pursuit of power or status, with anything that might distract them from the fundamental meaninglessness they feel. But none of these substitutes work. They are like trying to fill a hole shaped like meaning with objects of the wrong shape. Only meaning itself can fill the void. This is why Frankl's message is so important today. We live in an age of unprecedented wealth and technology, and yet rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide continue to rise. People are searching for something, often without knowing what. They are searching for meaning, and here is the good news. Meaning is available to everyone. It is not reserved for the wealthy, the talented, the lucky, or the successful. Every human being, in every circumstance, has the capacity to find meaning. It is woven into the fabric of existence itself. You do not need to wait for circumstances to change. You do not need permission from anyone. You do not need to achieve certain goals first. The opportunity for meaning is present right now, in this very moment, in whatever situation you find yourself. This brings us to a crucial point about how meaning is discovered. Frankl emphasized that meaning is not invented but discovered. It is not something you create out of nothing, but something you find, something that calls to you from outside yourself. Each situation, each moment, each life contains its own specific meaning, waiting to be recognized and responded to. This is different from the popular idea that you can make up whatever meaning you want. That life is a blank canvas on which you can paint anything. Frankl saw this kind of radical subjectivity as missing the point. Meaning, for Frankl, has an objective element. It makes demands on us. It calls us to respond. Think about it this way. When you see someone who needs help, there is a call in that situation. When you recognize an injustice, there is a demand to respond. When you encounter beauty or truth, there is an invitation to appreciate and understand. These are not arbitrary preferences you can take or leave. They are real meanings embedded in the fabric of life. Your task is not to manufacture meaning, but to develop the sensitivity to perceive it. It is about opening your eyes and ears and heart to the meanings that are already there, waiting for you to notice them. This perspective also addresses a common anxiety, the fear that you might choose the wrong meaning, that you might waste your life pursuing something that does not matter. Frankl offers reassurance here. Each person's life contains a unique meaning that only they can fulfill. No one can replace you in this. The specific contribution you have to make, the specific loves and works, and acts of courage that are yours, these cannot be done by anyone else. This means your life matters, not in some vague general sense, but in a specific, irreplaceable way. The meaning waiting for you to discover it is yours alone. Let us now explore how these insights apply to your everyday life, to the choices and challenges you face right now. Every day you wake up and face a series of situations. Some are routine, some are difficult, some are joyful, some are painful. In each of these situations, meaning is available, but you have to be awake to it. You have to choose to engage with it. Consider your work, whatever it is. You might be employed by others or working for yourself. You might love your job or struggle with it. But in that work, whatever its nature, there are opportunities for meaning. You can approach your tasks with care and excellence. You can look for ways to serve others through what you do. You can see your work as a contribution, however small, to something larger than yourself. This does not require a dramatic change in your circumstances. It requires a shift in how you see what you already do. The same job can be experienced as drudgery or as an opportunity for meaningful engagement, depending on your perspective. Consider your relationships. Every encounter with another person is an opportunity for connection, for understanding, for love. You can pass through your days barely noticing the people around you, or you can truly see them, listen to them, care about them. Every conversation is a chance to bring something of value, whether it is kindness, wisdom, humor, or simply presence. Every relationship is a garden that can be cultivated or neglected. The meaning is there, waiting for you to engage with it. Consider your challenges and difficulties. These are not just obstacles to overcome so you can get to the good parts of life. They are integral parts of your life, containing their own meanings. How you meet your difficulties, whether with courage or cowardice, with growth or stagnation, with compassion or bitterness, these choices define who you are. Frankl would remind you that you are not determined by your circumstances. You are not a leaf blown by the wind, helpless and passive. You are a being capable of choosing, of responding, of creating meaning through your actions and attitudes. Now, there is something important to address here. Some people hear these ideas and feel overwhelmed by responsibility. If meaning is up to me, they think, then I am to blame for my meaninglessness. If my attitude is my choice, then my unhappiness is my fault. This is a misunderstanding. Frankl is not offering another stick to beat yourself with. He is not adding to your burden, but showing you your power. Yes, you have responsibility, but responsibility is not the same as blame. Responsibility means you have the ability to respond. It means you are not helpless. It means you have agency and power and choice. This should be liberating, not crushing. And Frankl also recognized that human beings need help. We need each other. We need support, encouragement, guidance, and love. Taking responsibility does not mean going it alone. It means accepting your part in the great cooperative venture of human existence, a venture in which we all support and are supported by others. If you are struggling, reach out. If you are lost, seek guidance. If you are in despair, let someone help you. This is not weakness but wisdom. This is not failure but courage. Frankl himself survived with the help of others, and he spent his life helping others in turn. Let us continue with more of Frankl's crucial insights after the war Frankl developed his approach into a formal school of psychotherapy called logotherapy. The name comes from the Greek word logos, which means meaning or purpose, where other therapies focus primarily on the past, on childhood traumas, on repressed emotions. Logotherapy focused on the future, on purpose, on the meaning that calls the patient forward. One of the key techniques of logotherapy is called paradoxical intention. This is a method for dealing with fears and obsessive thoughts by doing the opposite of what the anxiety demands. Here is how it works. Fear often creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you are afraid of blushing in public, that fear makes you more likely to blush, which increases the fear, which increases the blushing. If you are afraid of not sleeping, that fear keeps you awake, which increases the fear, which makes sleep even more impossible. The more you fight against these symptoms, the worse they become. Paradoxical intention breaks this cycle. Instead of fighting the fear, you embrace it with humor and exaggeration. The person afraid of blushing might decide to try to blush as red as possible. The person with insomnia might decide to stay awake as long as they can. By intending the very thing they fear, they remove the fear from the equation. And often, the symptom disappears. This technique reflects a deeper truth. Much of our suffering comes from fighting against our experiences rather than accepting them. We create secondary suffering by resisting the primary discomfort. If you feel anxious, you might then feel anxious about being anxious. If you feel sad, you might then judge yourself for feeling sad. This secondary layer of resistance adds enormously to the original pain. Learning to accept your experiences, to stop fighting against what is, can bring tremendous relief. This is not the same as giving up or being passive. It is about not wasting energy on futile resistance. You can accept what is and still work to change it. In fact, acceptance often frees up energy that was previously spent on resistance, making change more possible. Another important concept from logotherapy is dereflection. This is the technique of directing attention away from oneself towards something or someone else. Many psychological problems involve excessive self-focus. The person is constantly monitoring themselves, evaluating themselves, worrying about themselves. This self-absorption often makes problems worse. The more you focus on your own happiness, the more elusive it becomes. The more you watch your own performance, the worse you perform. Deflection means shifting your attention outward. Instead of asking, "How do I feel?" you ask, "What does this situation need?" Instead of monitoring your own happiness, you engage with the world, with others, with meaningful tasks. Paradoxically, this often brings the happiness and peace that direct pursuit could not achieve. This connects to a fundamental truth about human nature. We are built for engagement with the world, not for self-absorption. Our minds work best when focused on tasks, on problems to solve, on people to help, on beauty to appreciate. When we turn inward too much, when we become the primary object of our own attention, something goes wrong. This does not mean ignoring yourself or your needs. It means recognizing that the path to fulfillment usually leads outward, through connection and contribution, not inward through endless self-analysis. Now let us talk about something that many people find uncomfortable: the reality of death. Frankl saw the awareness of death not as a morbid preoccupation, but as a catalyst for meaningful living. In the camps, death was ever present. There was no possibility of forgetting it or pretending it did not exist. And this constant awareness of mortality gave life an intensity and preciousness that is often missing in comfortable circumstances. Most of us, most of the time, live as if we will live forever. We postpone important things. We put off what matters. We assume there will always be more time. We sleepwalk through our days, taking life for granted. But this is an illusion. Our time is limited. Your time is limited. Every moment that passes is gone forever, and every moment still to come is uncertain. This is not meant to frighten you or depress you. It is meant to wake you up. When you truly understand that your time is finite, priorities become clear. When you recognize that you will not live forever, what matters becomes obvious. The petty concerns fall away. The essential things stand out. Frankl suggested that we should live as if we were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as we are about to act now. This thought experiment brings urgency to the present moment. It makes you ask whether this choice, this action, this use of time is really what you want. It cuts through the fog of habit and distraction. Consider for a moment how you are spending your life. If you knew you had only a year left, what would you do differently? If you knew you had only a month, a week, a day, the answers to these questions reveal what truly matters to you. And here is the important insight: you do not need to wait for a terminal diagnosis to live accordingly. You can start now. The intensity and meaning that come from awareness of mortality are available to you today, if you choose to embrace them. This awareness also brings a different perspective on the past. The things that happened, the experiences you have had, the love you have given and received, the achievements, even the sufferings, these are not lost. They are safely stored in the past, preserved forever. Nothing can undo what has been. Frankl found this thought comforting rather than depressing. The past is not nothing. It is a treasury of experience, safely gathered and beyond the reach of any future harm. What you have done cannot be undone. What you have loved cannot be unloved. What you have become is written forever in the book of existence. This means that the choices you make now are being written into eternity. The meaning you create today will last forever. The love you give, the work you do, the courage you show, these are your permanent contribution to reality. Let us now discuss suffering again because it is so central to Frankl's message. Frankl was very clear that he was not glorifying suffering or suggesting that people should seek it out. Unnecessary suffering, suffering that could be avoided, should be avoided. If there is a practical solution to a problem, use it. If pain can be prevented, prevent it. There is no virtue in suffering when the suffering is pointless. But some suffering cannot be avoided. Some losses cannot be prevented. Some pain is simply part of life. And it is in these unavoidable situations that the attitude towards suffering becomes crucial. Frankl writes about prisoners in the camps who gave up, who lost all hope, who stopped caring whether they lived or died. These prisoners often died soon after, even when their physical condition was no worse than others. Something vital had been extinguished. On the other hand, he writes about prisoners who maintained their inner life, who found meaning in small things, who held on to hope and purpose. These prisoners had a far better chance of survival, and even if they did not survive, they died as human beings, with their dignity intact. This is not magical thinking. There is actually strong scientific evidence that psychological factors affect physical health. Hope, purpose, and meaning strengthen the immune system and increase resilience. Despair and hopelessness weaken the body. The will to meaning is not just a philosophical concept but a biological reality. But even beyond survival, there is the question of how we live, how we experience our existence, how we maintain our humanity. Two prisoners might face identical external conditions, and one might be inwardly crushed while the other remains inwardly free. The difference is in the inner attitude, the choice of how to respond. Frankl tells of an experience near the end of his captivity. He was sick, exhausted, and close to death. Another prisoner came to tell him about a wonderful dream he had, a dream of liberation on a specific date. The man was convinced the war would end and they would be freed on that date. When the date came and liberation did not arrive, the man lost all hope. Within days, he was dead. His spirit, which had been kept alive by hope, could not survive the disappointment. This story illustrates both the power and the danger of hope tied to specific expectations. Hope is essential. Without hope, the human spirit withers. But hope attached too rigidly to particular outcomes can shatter when those outcomes do not materialize. The most resilient hope is not hope for specific results, but hope in the meaning of life itself. Trust that existence has significance even when we cannot see how things will unfold. This kind of hope is not dependent on circumstances going the way we want. Think about your own hopes and fears. Are they tied to specific outcomes? What if those outcomes do not happen? Can you find a deeper ground for hope, one that does not depend on things going your way? This brings us to the concept of tragic optimism. Frankl describes this as the ability to maintain hope and find meaning despite the tragic elements of human existence. Despite pain, despite guilt, despite death, despite the fact that life involves unavoidable suffering. Tragic optimism does not mean pretending that bad things are good or that suffering does not hurt. It means facing the full reality of the human condition, including its dark aspects, and still saying yes to life, still finding meaning, still embracing existence with all its pain and beauty. This is different from shallow optimism that denies or ignores the dark side of life. That kind of optimism is fragile. When reality intrudes, when suffering cannot be avoided, shallow optimism collapses into despair. Tragic optimism is robust because it has already incorporated the darkness. It knows that life is hard, that suffering is real, that death is certain, and it chooses meaning anyway. It says yes anyway. It embraces life anyway. This is the kind of strength that can survive anything, not because it is in denial, but because it has faced the worst and found that meaning persists even there. Let me share with you now some practical guidance for applying these insights in your daily life. First, take responsibility for your life, not blame, but responsibility. Recognize that you have the power to choose your attitude, your response, your direction. Stop waiting for circumstances to change. Stop blaming others or fate or bad luck. Start where you are, with what you have. Second, identify your unique meaning. What are you called to do? What work is waiting for you? What love is asking for your devotion? What suffering is requiring your dignified response? Listen deeply to your own life for the answers. Third, engage with the world. Stop excessive self-focus. Look outward. Find tasks that absorb you. Find people who need you. Find beauty that moves you. Get out of your own head and into life. Fourth, cultivate awareness of death. Not morbidly, but wisely. Let the knowledge that your time is limited sharpen your priorities. Ask yourself regularly whether you are living according to what truly matters. Fifth, develop your inner life. The external world cannot be fully controlled, but your inner world can be cultivated. Practice reflection, meditation, Contemplation. Build inner resources that will sustain you when external supports fail. Sixth, help others. One of the most reliable ways to find meaning is through service. When you help someone else, when you contribute to something beyond yourself, meaning naturally arises. Do not wait until you have figured everything out. Start helping now, and clarity will come. Seventh, never give up. No matter how dark things seem, no matter how hopeless you feel, hold on. The night does not last forever. Meaning can be found in every situation, though sometimes it takes time to discover. Give yourself that time. Now, let us talk about the relationship between freedom and responsibility. Frankl often said that the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast should be complemented by a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. Freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. The freedom Frankl speaks of is not freedom from difficulty or from the consequences of your actions. It is freedom of the spirit, freedom to choose your attitude, freedom to decide who you will be in the face of whatever circumstances arise. But this freedom immediately implies responsibility. If you are truly free to choose, then you are also responsible for your choices. You cannot blame your genes or your upbringing or your circumstances or society or anyone else. The buck stops with you. This can feel heavy. Responsibility is demanding. It would be easier in some ways to believe that you are determined by forces beyond your control, that you are not really free, that you cannot help being who you are. But this belief, while temporarily comforting, is ultimately destructive. It strips away your dignity and power. The weight of responsibility is also the weight of significance. If you are responsible, that means you matter. Your choices have consequences. You make a difference. You are not a passive spectator, but an active participant in the creation of reality. Embrace this responsibility. Welcome it. It is the mark of your humanity, the sign of your freedom, the source of your dignity. Let us speak now about the collective dimension of meaning. While Frankl emphasizes individual responsibility and personal meaning, he also recognizes that we are social beings. Our meanings are not purely private, but are woven into the fabric of community and relationship. Think about the sources of meaning in your own life. Likely, many of them involve other people, your family, your friends, your community, your nation, your humanity. We find meaning not in isolation, but in connection. This has practical implications. Cultivating relationships is not just pleasant, but essential for a meaningful life. Being part of communities, contributing to shared purposes, caring about collective goods. These are not distractions from your personal meaning, but vital components of it. At the same time, the collective does not absorb or replace the individual. Each person retains their unique responsibility, their particular calling, their irreplaceable contribution. The community is made up of individuals who maintain their freedom and dignity while participating in something larger. This balance between individual and collective is delicate. Too much individualism leads to isolation and alienation. Too much collectivism leads to the loss of personal responsibility and the submersion of the individual. Frankl saw both extremes in his lifetime and knew their dangers. The healthy path lies between. Be yourself, irreplaceable and free, and be connected, part of something larger, contributing to the common good. These are not contradictory, but complementary. Now, as we approach the end of this exploration, let me remind you of the core message. You have the power to find meaning in any circumstance. This power cannot be taken from you. Between what happens and how you respond lies a space of freedom. In that space, you create yourself through your choices. Meaning comes through creating, through experiencing, and through how you face unavoidable suffering. Happiness is not something to be pursued directly, but emerges as a side effect of meaningful living. Your life matters, not in some abstract way, but specifically and irreplaceably. The meaning waiting for you is yours alone to discover and fulfill. No one can take your place. Death is real and your time is limited. Let this awareness sharpen your priorities and bring urgency to what matters. Do not sleepwalk through your days. Wake up and live fully. Take responsibility, not blame, but the recognition that you have the power to respond, to choose, to shape your life. This responsibility is the mark of your freedom and dignity. and never give up. No matter how dark things seem, meaning persists. Hope is always possible. The human spirit can endure more than you imagine, can find light in the deepest darkness, can maintain its freedom even when everything external has been taken away. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust and emerged with a message of hope that has touched millions of lives. He did not minimize the horror he experienced. He faced it fully, and he found that even there, especially there, meaning was possible. If meaning was possible in Auschwitz, it is possible in your life. Whatever you face, however difficult, however painful, there is a way through. There is a purpose waiting to be discovered. There is a meaning calling you forward. Let me share more of what Frankl observed about human nature in extreme conditions, because these observations reveal truths about all of us. In the camps, Frankl noticed that the prisoners went through psychological phases. The first phase was shock. When they arrived, stripped of everything, facing the unthinkable, most prisoners experienced a kind of numbness, a disbelief that this could really be happening. The mind protects itself by refusing to fully comprehend. The second phase was adaptation. The prisoners developed a kind of emotional death, a protective shell that allowed them to function despite the horror around them. They stopped reacting to things that would have devastated them in normal life. They learned to watch beatings and deaths without visible emotion. They focused on survival, on getting through each day. This adaptation was necessary for survival, but it came at a cost. The prisoners worried about what they were becoming. They wondered if they would ever be able to feel again, to return to normal human emotions. Frankl noted something important here. Even in this state of emotional shutdown, there were moments when feeling broke through. A beautiful sunset, a memory of a loved one, a piece of music, a moment of kindness. These experiences showed that the inner life was not dead, only dormant. The capacity for feeling remained, waiting for circumstances that would allow it to emerge. The third phase came after liberation, and this is perhaps the most surprising part of Frankl's account. Liberation was not simply joyful. Many prisoners found that they could not feel the happiness they expected. They had dreamed of freedom for so long, had held on to hope through unimaginable suffering, and now that freedom had come, they felt strangely empty. Part of this was the slow return of normal emotions after the protective numbness. Part of it was the difficulty of re-entering a world that had not shared their experience, that could not understand what they had been through. And part of it was what Frankl called the terrible burden of being able to believe in anything again after the complete collapse of trust and hope that the camps had caused. Many liberated prisoners also faced a moral danger. They had been oppressed for so long that they now felt justified in becoming oppressors themselves. They had been on the receiving end of violence and cruelty, and now they wanted to dish it out. Frankl saw this temptation and warned against it. To become like your tormentors is to let them win twice. The challenge of liberation is to emerge with your humanity not only intact but deepened. These observations about the phases of psychological response have implications for anyone going through difficult periods. If you are in the shock phase, be patient with yourself. The mind needs time to absorb overwhelming experiences. If you are in the adaptation phase, protecting yourself through emotional distance, know that your feelings are not gone, only protected. They will return. And if you are emerging from a difficult period, be gentle with yourself. Recovery takes time. The emotions you expect may not come immediately. Adjusting to better circumstances can be surprisingly hard. Now let me tell you about a specific incident that illustrates the power of meaning in action. Frankl describes a day when he was particularly low. He was exhausted, sick, and in despair. The thought of another day of suffering seemed unbearable. He was close to giving up. At that moment, he was called to help with a medical emergency. Another prisoner was very ill and needed attention. Frankl, despite his own condition, went to help. In caring for that other person, something shifted. His own suffering, while still present, receded into the background. He was absorbed in a task, in service to another human being. His life had purpose again, even if only for that moment. This is the paradox of service. When you are most depleted, most focused on your own problems, the remedy is often to turn your attention outward. Helping others helps you. Service to something beyond yourself generates energy and meaning that self-focus cannot provide. This does not mean ignoring your own needs or pretending you are fine when you are not. It means recognizing that the path through your own difficulties often leads through engagement with the world, not retreat from it. Think about times when you have been stuck in your own problems, going in circles, unable to find relief. Then something or someone needed your attention. You helped, and somehow, paradoxically, you felt better. This is not magical. It is how human beings work. We are built for connection and contribution. When we act according to our nature, we flourish. Let us delve deeper into the question of values and how they relate to meaning. Frankl distinguished between three types of values that guide human life. Creative values are realized through action, through making and doing, through contributing something to the world. Experiential values are realized through receiving from the world, through encountering beauty, truth, and love. Attitudinal values are realized through how we face suffering and fate, through the stand we take in situations we cannot change. Most people understand creative and experiential values intuitively. We know that accomplishment and enjoyment give life meaning, but attitudinal values are often overlooked, and they are perhaps the most important. Why? Because situations arise when we cannot create and cannot enjoy. Illness may take away our ability to work. Loss may take away our sources of pleasure. We may face circumstances that offer no possibility of positive action or experience. In these situations, attitudinal values become our only avenue of meaning. How we bear our suffering, how we face our fate, how we maintain our dignity when everything else is stripped away. This becomes the measure of our humanity. Frankl's own life demonstrated this. In the camps, creative values were limited. There was forced labor, but little opportunity for meaningful work. Experiential values were limited. There was little beauty, little pleasure, constant pain. But attitudinal values remained available. The prisoners could still choose their inner response. They could still maintain their spiritual freedom. This is profoundly hopeful because it means that meaning is always available. No matter how restricted your circumstances, no matter how limited your options, you can always choose your attitude. You can always decide who you will be in the face of what you face. And this brings us to the question of dignity. What is human dignity? Where does it come from? Frankl's answer is clear. Human dignity comes from our capacity for meaning, from our spiritual freedom, from our ability to transcend our circumstances through our inner life. Dignity is not given by others or by external conditions. It is inherent in human nature itself. The Nazis tried to strip the prisoners of all dignity. They used humiliation systematically, treating human beings as numbers, as objects, as less than animals. And from the outside, it might have seemed that they succeeded, but Frankl and others proved them wrong. Within their inner world, the prisoners could maintain their dignity. They could choose not to become what the Nazis wanted them to become. They could preserve their humanity through their attitudes and their choices. This means that your dignity does not depend on how others treat you or what circumstances you face. You carry your dignity within you. It is yours by virtue of being human. No one can take it unless you surrender it. Remember this when you face humiliation, when you are treated unfairly, when you feel diminished by circumstances or by others. Your core dignity is untouchable. It lives in your capacity to choose, in your inner freedom, in your ability to find meaning. Now let us consider the practical question of how to actually discover your meaning. Frankl was often asked this question. People wanted a formula, a method, a step-by-step process. But Frankl was careful not to prescribe specific meanings. That would be like a chess master telling a player what the best move is without knowing the position on the board. Each person's meaning is specific to them, to their situation, to their unique combination of abilities, circumstances, and relationships. No one else can tell you what your meaning is. You have to discover it yourself. But Frankl did offer guidance on how to approach this discovery. First, pay attention to what calls you. What situations evoke your sense of responsibility? What needs touch you? What tasks engage you fully? These are signals pointing toward your meaning. Second, consider your gifts. What can you do that others cannot, or that you can do especially well? Your unique abilities are not random. They are equipment for your unique mission. Third, look at your circumstances. What opportunities does your specific situation offer? What problems are you positioned to address? Sometimes what seems like an obstacle is actually a gateway to meaning. Fourth, remember the people who depend on you, who love you, who need what only you can give. Your relationships are sources of meaning and also guides to meaning. Fifth, do not wait for certainty. Meaning often reveals itself through action, not through thinking. Start moving in a direction that seems right, and course correct as you learn more. Paralysis by analysis is a trap. Engage with life, and meaning will emerge. Sixth, be patient. Meaning is not always immediately visible. Sometimes you have to live through a period before its meaning becomes clear. Trust that the meaning is there, even when you cannot yet see it. Let us now address a common misconception about Frankl's ideas. Some people read Frankl and conclude that he was against pleasure, that he saw the pursuit of enjoyment as a mistake. This is not accurate. Frankl was not against pleasure. He recognized that enjoyment is one of the pathways to meaning. Beauty, love, laughter, sensory delight. All of these are legitimate and important parts of a good life. What Frankl warned against was making pleasure the ultimate goal, the supreme value that everything else serves. When pleasure becomes the meaning of life, paradoxically, pleasure itself becomes elusive. You end up frustrated and empty, chasing a satisfaction that always recedes. But when meaning is primary, pleasure finds its proper place. You can enjoy things fully because you are not grasping at them desperately. You can appreciate experiences because they are part of a meaningful whole, not substitutes for meaning. Think about the difference between eating when you are anxiously trying to fill an emotional void versus eating when you are simply hungry and grateful for good food. The physical act is the same, but the experience is completely different. One is compulsive and unsatisfying. The other is genuine and fulfilling. The same principle applies across life. When meaning is the foundation, everything else takes on its proper value. Work, relationships, pleasures, challenges, all find their place in a coherent whole. Now let me share some thoughts about how Frankl's ideas relate to the challenges of modern life. We live in a time of unprecedented comfort and convenience. Many problems that plagued previous generations have been solved or reduced. Food is abundant. Medical care is advanced. Technology has eliminated much drudgery. By material standards, we have never had it better. And yet psychological suffering is epidemic. Depression and anxiety are at all-time highs. Suicide rates are alarming. Addiction, both to substances and to behaviors, is rampant. Something is wrong. Frankl would diagnose this as a crisis of meaning. Our material needs are largely met, but our need for meaning is not. We have more comfort but less purpose. We have more entertainment but less engagement. We have more options but less clarity about what matters. The existential vacuum Frankl described is now a widespread condition. People feel empty, bored, and directionless despite having everything they supposedly need for happiness. The hunger for meaning shows up as restlessness, as compulsive consumption, as addiction to distraction, as a vague but persistent sense that something important is missing. What is the solution? Not less material comfort, but more attention to meaning. Not abandoning technology, but using it in service of purpose. Not rejecting pleasure, but putting it in proper perspective. The practical steps remain the same. Find work that matters to you. Cultivate deep relationships. Develop your inner life. Face your challenges with courage. Contribute to something beyond yourself. Stay connected to what you truly value. These are not complicated prescriptions. They are not expensive or exclusive. They are available to everyone, but they require attention, intention, and effort. They require you to resist the pull of distraction, the temptation of easy entertainment, the drift toward passivity. Making your life meaningful is a project, an ongoing effort, a daily choice. It does not happen automatically. The forces of modern life push toward meaninglessness, toward consumption without purpose, toward activity without direction. You have to actively push back. But here is the encouraging news. When you do push back, when you engage with meaning, life becomes rich in ways that no amount of comfort or entertainment can match. The people who find meaning report higher levels of satisfaction, resilience, and well-being than those who simply pursue pleasure. Meaning is not just more noble than pleasure. It is also more effective at producing genuine happiness. So the path of meaning is not a sacrifice. It is not choosing duty over enjoyment. It is choosing a deeper, more lasting, more satisfying form of life. It is choosing to be fully human rather than half asleep. Let us now go even deeper into the heart of what makes us human. Frankl believed that human beings are fundamentally spiritual creatures. This does not necessarily mean religious in a traditional sense. It means that we have a dimension of existence that transcends the physical and psychological. We have a capacity for meaning, for values, for self-transcendence, for love, for creativity, for conscience. This spiritual dimension is what makes us distinctly human. Other animals seek pleasure and avoid pain. Other animals have psychological drives and emotions. But only humans ask the question of meaning. Only humans live in relation to values that transcend their immediate needs. Only humans create art, science, philosophy, and religion. Only humans can sacrifice themselves for principles and purposes. This spiritual dimension is also the seat of our freedom. The physical body is subject to laws of nature. The psychological self is influenced by conditioning and drives. But the spiritual self can step back, can evaluate, can choose, can transcend. When Frankl speaks of the space between stimulus and response, he is speaking of the spiritual dimension. This is where our freedom lives. This is where we decide who we will be. Cultivating this spiritual dimension is essential for a meaningful life. This might involve religious practice, but it does not have to. It involves any practice that strengthens your capacity for reflection, for values, for self-transcendence. Meditation, contemplation, deep reading, meaningful conversation, time in nature, artistic creation or appreciation, all of these can nourish the spirit. What nourishes your spirit? What practices help you connect with your deepest values and highest capacities? Make time for these practices. They are not luxuries. They are necessities for a truly human life. And now, as we begin to draw this exploration to a close, let me leave you with some final reflections. Viktor Frankl lived until 1997, dying at the age of 92. After his liberation from the camps, he returned to Vienna and spent the rest of his life teaching, writing, and practicing logotherapy. He wrote over 30 books, lectured around the world, and touched countless lives with his message. But more than his professional accomplishments, Frankl embodied his own teachings. He found meaning after unimaginable loss. He rebuilt his life with purpose and love. He remarried, had children, experienced joy and fulfillment. He did not merely survive the Holocaust. He thrived in its aftermath, transformed by what he had learned. His life is proof that his ideas work. They are not abstract theories but tested truths. If they could guide a man through the concentration camps and into a fulfilling life, they can guide you through whatever you face. And what you face matters. Your struggles are real. Your pain is valid. Frankl would never minimize what you are going through, but he would remind you that you have more power than you think. He would remind you that meaning is available even now, in this moment, in your specific circumstances. So as you return to your life after listening to these words, carry with you this fundamental truth. You are free, not free from difficulty, not free from pain, not free from the consequences of your actions, but free in your spirit, free to choose your response, free to find meaning, free to become who you are called to be. No one can take this freedom from you. No circumstance can eliminate it. No failure can destroy it. As long as you breathe, you have the power to choose, to create, to love, to grow. Use this freedom wisely. Use it to build a life of meaning and purpose. Use it to serve others and contribute to the world. Use it to face your suffering with dignity and courage. Use it to become fully human. The world needs what only you can give. There is a space in existence shaped exactly like you, waiting to be filled by your unique contribution. Do not leave that space empty. Do not let fear or doubt or despair hold you back. Step into your calling with courage and faith. Remember that happiness is not the goal but the byproduct of meaningful living. Stop chasing happiness directly. Instead, chase meaning. Engage with life fully. Give yourself to what matters, and happiness will find you. Remember that suffering, when it cannot be avoided, can be transformed. Your wounds can become wisdom. Your struggles can become strength. Your darkest hours can become light for others. Remember that you are connected to all of humanity, to all who have suffered and hoped and loved and dreamed. You are not alone in your journey. Others have walked this path before you. Others walk beside you now. Others will come after you, and your life can be a gift to them. Remember that time is short. Do not waste it on what does not matter. Do not postpone what is important. Live each day as if it were significant, because it is. Every moment is an opportunity for meaning, and every moment passes forever. Remember that you are responsible, not blamed, but capable of response. You have the power to shape your life, to choose your direction, to create your meaning. This responsibility is heavy but also glorious. It is the mark of your dignity, the sign of your freedom. And finally, remember that meaning is always available. No matter how dark things seem, no matter how lost you feel, meaning persists. It may be hidden, it may require effort to find, but it is there, waiting for you. Viktor Frankl discovered this truth in the worst conditions human beings have ever created. He emerged from the abyss with a message of hope that has sustained millions. Now that message is yours. Take it, live it, share it. Your life has meaning. Your suffering can have purpose. Your freedom is real. Now go and live accordingly. If this message has touched you, if you have found value in these words, I ask you to do something, not for me, but for yourself and for others who might benefit. First, take one insight from what you have heard and apply it today. Not tomorrow, not someday, but today. Choose one action, one shift in perspective, one decision that reflects what you have learned. Small actions lead to great changes. Second, share this with someone who needs it. You probably know someone who is struggling, who is searching for meaning, who could benefit from Frankl's wisdom. Pass it on. Be a link in the chain of hope. And if you want to continue this journey with me, if you want more content that helps you live a deeper, more meaningful life, then subscribe to Audiobook Gist right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest content. Each video we create is designed to bring you wisdom, inspiration, and practical guidance for living your best life. Also, take a moment to like this video. That simple action helps more people discover this content. Your like is a vote for meaning, for hope, for the kind of content that makes a real difference in people's lives. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. What insight resonated most with you? What are you going to do differently after listening? Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. This is a community, and your voice matters. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for opening yourself to these ideas. Thank you for being someone who seeks meaning rather than just distraction. Remember Viktor Frankl's core message. Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. You have that freedom. Use it well. This has been Audiobook Gist. Until next time, keep searching for meaning, keep growing, keep becoming who you are meant to be. Your life is waiting for you. Go live it.